having them growing up with this mindset of giving back and of making sure that we're active in our community, because things don't just change, people change them.
We get to spend a little bit of time listening to our special guest, Monique from San Antonio. She participated in the City of San Antonio 2-year fund, and now most recently as part of advocacy and systems change potential in the Rising Up Together San Antonio 18-month initiative. She uses her voice for her community, and I imagine she also uses a great deal of her voice taking care of a family of 10 in the Lone Star State. Everyone, please help me welcome Monique to the Fireside Chat. Let's get into it. Who are you? What do you do?
So, as you mentioned, my name is Monique. I have a family of 10 in the moment. I have my 6 children. I have 2 stepchildren, and I have my fiance. And so, first and foremost, I am a mother. I love what, the behind the scenes stuff of what's happening in my home. Yeah, family of 10. And so that I think that's the biggest priority, biggest job that I have, right? And aside from that, I am really active in my community. I love giving back to my community, whether that's through using my voice, my story, just anywhere I'm able to be able to utilize anything that I have to offer to be able to better my community. I'm probably there. So there's a lot of people within my community who know me and respect me and appreciate me, and I appreciate and respect them right back.
Let's talk about the well. First, congratulations on being a fiance and all of that good stuff. I'm still blown by the fact that you're able to take care of a family of 10. There are entrepreneurs out there that are struggling trying to get employees, 2 employees together, let alone 10.
Right.
That's amazing. Let's peel back the layers first. Let's talk about why San Antonio is so important to you.
So I was born and raised in San Antonio, and everything I've ever known has to do with community. The saying that it takes a village to raise a child. That is 1,000,000% true there within the community, because I remember my mom sometimes struggling and having to go to like food pantries and stuff like that. And so, the community itself, we are a very resource rich community. And I could not have been brought up the way I was. I could not have, achieved things that I have achieved without a helping hand within all of this here in our community. And so I love San Antonio. We visited other places before that I've absolutely fallen in love with. But at the end of the day, when you think of home, for me, it is San Antonio.
Can you share, say, a beautiful moment, or what are some of the beautiful parts of living in San Antonio right now?
Of course, yeah. So whenever I'm talking to someone who's not from San Antonio about San Antonio, I think of like community events that we have where, it gives us an opportunity to go out and like bond with our children. So a big one for me is Fiesta. I don't know if anybody has ever visited San Antonio during Fiesta. It's probably a 10-day gap, a 10-day window where we have so many events. It's just like culture surrounding culture. It is everybody. You have like, a Cajun festival. You have lots of food, lots and lots and lots of food. You have like an Asian festival. It's just every culture that you could think about coming together and celebrating within those 10 days. And for me and my family, I think the biggest thing that we do during that time is we do a lot of bonding, because we go to like the parades and we go to, a lot of these events. There's events that are geared towards children. There's events that are for adults. And so Fiesta is always something that we look forward to doing as a family. My kids already know to get ready for that. They have like glow sticks that they throw out into the crowd, and my kids do this like competition where they're trying to figure out who's collecting the most. We have them almost always coming home with like glow sticks up to their head, and they're just so competitive. It's just something that we look forward to every single year. And for me, that's probably the biggest standout of things that we do throughout the year. Of course, there's so much more. We go ice skating at Travis Park. We do the Christmas tree lighting that's getting ready to happen here after Thanksgiving. There's just always something happening where it gives you an opportunity to keep your kids busy and keep that family bond strengthening and building together.
I got to check out Fiesta.
You do.
Let's talk about your kids. Can you break down the ages and just what it's like raising your kids?
Yes. So biologically, my oldest and youngest are my bookend boys, and then we have 4 girls in between. My youngest is 7, and then he's 7, and then we have 2 daughters that are 8 and 9, so they are right back to back. 7, 8, 9, and then we have my other daughter who's 13, my other daughter's 15, and of course my oldest is 17. So there's a little bit of a gap there, but with our little ones, not at all. And then I have my 2 stepchildren who one of them is 8. He's about to be 9. And then one who's 14 and she's about to be 15 as well. So there's lots of kids, different age ranges. Our youngest is, of course, 7. And then our oldest is 17, about to be 18. I'm about to have an adult.
Wow. Congratulations to you. What are some of those conversations like? Because I would imagine there's never a quiet moment.
There's never a dull moment. The crazy thing is, I tell everyone, like, our family is disorganized chaos, right? There's always something happening. There's always someone fighting with someone or someone who's, doing something to someone. And so I'm used to the constant noise and the constant, hearing once they get home, it's just like 100 miles an hour, right? But whenever I'm not with them, for instance, today I'm in a conference here in Austin, and whenever I'm not with them, I'm just trying to find what to do with myself because I'm so used to being around them all the time. But our house is never, ever, ever quiet or dull or anything like that. There's always something happening. There's always someone who needs help with someone who needs, a project to be done, or just wanting to tell us about their day. And so we always have moments like that. And so the biggest one for me is at the dinner table. We definitely make priority at the dinner table to try to do like our pit and our peak of our day in order to get a better understanding of what's going on with everybody, because there are so many of them where they get home from school and by the time they go to bed, we only have a little window of them. And so at that dinner table is really where we can figure out what's going on with our kids. So we utilize the dinner table a lot. That's probably the biggest tool within our household.
That's a parenting gym right there. Oh wow.
It is.
Thanks for that wisdom. I'm gonna put that into practice. Now, I know you talked about your household being disorganized chaos, but I think even if it was quiet, from what I've known about you, you would still be busy. You would still be very active. In fact, right now you're on a couple different boards. Can you talk about that?
Yes. So I was recently the chair for the parent collaboration group. And so what that is it's a organization of a parent advisory committee where we had families coming into the DFPS system, and we would help them navigate it once they were in the system, whether it was they came in with an investigation or their kids were removed. A lot of times we were working with families whose kids were removed. And so we were just helping them navigate, find out their rights, connecting them to resources, trying to get them the most successful outcome that we could for their situation. And so that's what I started off doing in 2016, was helping families get their kids back. And so as a result of that, my perspective changed a little. And so now I'm on the preventative side. Now I am with the Preventative and Early Intervention PEI, and I am the chair of the San Antonio Hopes Committee. I had a button on a little while ago, the Hopes Committee. And so what we do now is we try to give our feedback to these programs who are essentially, taking care of, I think altogether, I just came out of the program here, the conference here, and I believe that in the fiscal year of last year, we served 66,000 families here in Texas. And so now it's shifted a little bit more to preventing, right? Because if we can prevent children from coming into the system to begin with, that is a huge pat on the back for us. If we can just do that for even one family, not let alone knowing that we're working with 66,000, that's amazing to me. Just being able to be that little grain of rice that gives these families hope or access to resources that they wouldn't normally ask about or know about, because, we can be prideful sometimes. And so getting a family to want to accept help or getting a family to accept that they need help is a challenge and a struggle, but I love what I do.
And I love that you love what you do, and I'm glad you're in position to do that. I also know through your story that there are a lot of different layers, and if you don't mind, I'd love to do a little word association where you kind of share from your perspective or even from your experiences the first thing that pops into your mind when I say the word. Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. The first one is resources.
Resources. So the first thing that pops up into my head is ask, right? The word ask, because without asking for help or without asking anyone about programs, a lot of times you're not made aware that they're available or that they exist. And so even asking someone if they need help, right? Or someone asking for help, that ask is going to be the biggest jump that you'll ever make. But I promise you that with these resources, that is it's gonna change your life. It did for me.
SNAP.
Food stamps. That's what comes to mind is a program that without that program we'd have a lot more abuse and neglect. I could tell you that much. It's life, it's food, it's a need that a lot of families here in all over the US are absolutely needing, and I appreciate it.
CPS.
Oh, that's a delicate one. So for me, what comes to mind is blessing in disguise. We had a CPS case in 2015 that essentially shook our entire world to the core, but also helped us in a sense that we turned points of our life around that we needed to for our children. I tell everyone all the time that we needed help. We just didn't know how badly. And that without CPS intervention, I don't know where we'd be right now. So blessing in disguise.
Can we lean into that one a little bit more? Can you tell me what those moments were like when you had intervention and you weren't able to see your kids?
Absolutely. So in 2015, all 6 of our children were removed as a result of an investigation where the allegations were abuse and neglect. The initial allegations were abuse and neglect. And so because of the severity of what they thought was happening with my kids, and I understand that now, all 6 of our kids were removed. And so I have been through some pretty traumatic stuff, but there has never been anything more traumatic than that day. Just knowing that our kids were going to go somewhere and that we weren't allowed to know where they were going or who they were going with or anything like this until our court date was the worst, because like I tell you, I'm so used to always being on top of everything with my kids, being with my kids, being involved with my kids, and just knowing that that wasn't going to be the case for, however long the case was supposed to last, it was scary. It was probably the worst day of my life. And so throughout the process, it was a total of 8 months. And in the first few months, you aren't allowed to see them very often. We were allowed to visit with them 1 hour every 2 weeks, which for 6 kids, by the time you say hi, it's time to say bye. And so it was hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. But also, so the allegations, like I mentioned, were abuse and neglect, right? And those ended up being ruled out, right? So we weren't found, I guess, like guilty of any of those things. But I can tell you that when our kids were removed, we were living in a hotel. We were paying, I think it was like at the time, $370 every week. And I had just had my baby. And so I wasn't working, my husband was working. And his entire check was going to make sure that this hotel kept getting paid every single week, every single week. And so we got into a vicious cycle of having to work so that we can maintain what little we had. And it was stressing us. It was stressing me. It was stressing him. It was stressing our kids. Our kids, we had them just, I mentioned this to you before, but we had them lined up like Tetris, right? Wherever we fit, that's where we were going to sleep. And so when CPS came into our lives and removed them, the reason that they were removed might have been wrong at the time, but with God, there's always a reason behind it. And so I find that the reason they were removed, outside looking in bigger picture, we needed to get them out. We just didn't know how to do it, because obviously you can't go crash on someone's couch with a family of 8, just, hey, let us all in. And so when our kids were removed, we had our first court date at 14 days. And within those 14 days, we already had at the time, I think it was like a 4-bedroom home. We had already started like our light, water, all of this stuff. And so it was just a break that we needed in order to get out of this horrible situation. And so it was on God's plan, right? It came when God needed it to, not in the way I would have asked for it, but it did. We needed it.
Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your vulnerability. I can only imagine how that felt, and I have to commend you for the steps that you took to make sure that once you were able to be reunited with your kids, you were in a much better place. Can you talk about some of those steps that you took to get to a point where you had a place to raise a family that size?
Yeah, so we had to make sure that the house that we were going to get for them wasn't just, another place for them to sleep. We wanted to make it a home. We wanted to make sure it was something we were able to afford for them, something that we were able to have everyone comfortable and everyone safe and sleeping correctly. And so we had been looking and looking and looking. And even before, when we were in hotel, we were doing the same, but with the cycle that we were on, that hamster wheel, we weren't able to save up for a deposit. We weren't able to save up for rent because we were too busy paying where we were. And so we had my sister had let us stay in her home for the 2 weeks. And after the 2 weeks, we were able to pay the rent, pay the deposit to move into this place. And so, to get them back once they were in the system, I say had to, right? Because they give you a service plan, and we had to do parenting, we had to do counseling, we had to do, of course, meeting with our kids, family counseling. It was just a whole list of things that we had to do that honestly, at the time, I had no idea why I had to do it. I just knew that I had to. So I tell everyone, the first parenting class that I took was an 8-week parenting class. And I was so angry and so blindsided by everything that was happening with my kids that I just took it. And I have it there at home, a certificate that says, wow, she took this and aced it. Congratulations. But I didn't learn a thing. And so once we were done with everything that we had to take on our service plan on paper, I just wanted to find things to be busy because, like I said, I always have to have noise, chaos, something going on. And so I started signing up for all these classes that I probably didn't need. And so one of them was a 2-year parenting program. And so it was through the Hopes initiative. And so they came into our home, and I learned so much in that parenting class. And I can honestly say that the mom I am today was molded and shaped in those classes because growing up, I didn't really know anything about like empathy or anything like that. We were, brought up in a very traditional Mexican household where kids are not seen or heard. You're just a item that is put right there, and you got to be quiet, and you got to not talk, and you got to not move, not be seen, not be heard. And so that was kind of how I was bringing up my kids, the same way that I was brought up. And so going into these classes and learning things like empathy, learning things like, child development, all of this stuff just opened my eyes and had me realize that how I was parenting maybe wasn't beneficial for them. For me, keeping them quiet and hushed and, tucked up in a little corner was great, but for them, it really wasn't doing much. And so going into these classes did benefit me and my family because as a result, we came out on the other side much better parents for them, and also them with the services that they had them taking, on the opposite end of it, brought them out being more respectful, brought them. So, like I said before, and I'll say it again, it maybe wasn't ideal of how I wanted these end results to come about, but it worked out in the end because we all needed something that we learned during this process, and it helped. It benefited us a lot.
How has your relationship with your children changed since your family overcame that with CPS?
Great question. So I think we've learned to trust each other a lot more. When our kids were first returned back to us, we and them had severe trauma, severe. There's been studies that show that having your children removed from you in like a child welfare case sends off the same emotions in your brain, you and your children, as if the other person had passed away. And so having to live in like a moment where we were dull and we were numb and we were just trying to survive, and transition into a environment where now we survive, now we want to thrive, right? So having to switch over and trust each other again, them trusting that not every knock on the door is going to be someone with a briefcase and a suit who's trying to take them away. Having to build trust and build bonds again is something that we work on even to date. I have my oldest son came out of it super traumatized, but working with him in counseling and working with him with us, just making sure that we know that we are there for each other, that what happened did happen. We acknowledge that, they acknowledge that, but that we're going to put ourselves now in a position where we're going to make sure that something like this never happens again and set ourselves up for a life where we're secure, we're safe, and we're loved. Just constantly doing things with them and making sure that they know that what happened, of course it happened, it affected us, it affected them, but now from here on out, we're here to move forward and to learn from it and grow from it. So that's been a challenge, but it's something that we work on every single day. If I could go back in time, I think that what I would do different would be to be more resource informed, right? Our community, like I said, we are a resource rich community. San Antonio has so many resources, but coming from, like I said, a very Hispanic household where you're prideful and you don't ask for help and you don't, those things, they might have worked out for our grandparents and for our parents, but in now, I now that I know all about these programs and stuff, I just don't understand what the point of not utilizing things that are meant to make our lives better and the lives of our families, right? So if I would go back in time, I would definitely utilize these programs a lot more.
Monique, what are some things that you try and make sure you do on a regular basis in your community or for yourself, for your kids? What is the way that you try and live by?
So I try to live by this state. I try to live by, my mom brought me up in a very um, give back mindset, right? Always trying to figure out ways to give back to your community, give back to the people around you. Um, and so that's something that I've tried to do my entire life and try to instill in my kids. We have times where we will go take water bottles and ice chests and then just go drive around, give them out to the homeless people. We had an event where we got clothes from like people within our community and then went and passed them out. We'll buy boxes of pizza, cheap stuff like that, and just go try to give it out. Something that doesn't cost a lot, but that you can, pass out to a whole bunch of people. We're always just trying to figure out ways to give back to our community because our community has given us so much, right? And we might not have much, but what we do have, we for sure are trying to bless lives of other people and always trying to make sure that we aren't just taking, that we do give back. And so I think that's the biggest key of how I try to parent is teaching my kids to be humble, teaching my kids to be aware that the world doesn't revolve around them. Yes, they are my world, but the world they're living in is much bigger and that they have to be a part of this ever moving, ever revolving world that is always changing, always. Things are always changing. And so making sure that they are connected to the people around us, not just our friends, not just our family, but to what's going on in our community and what is happening. How can we change things and make them better? And so having them growing up with this mindset of giving back and of, making sure that we're active in our community because things don't just change, people change them. And so bringing them up from the littlest one, I can tell you, bringing them up that way is genuinely gives me a warmness within me because I know that I'm not just raising people, right? I'm raising people who have answers and people who are paving the way and people who are helping give our community and our future a little bit of light.
I love that, and I love your outlook. I love your perspective. I'd love to tie it to UpTogether. You've experienced UpTogether in a couple different ways. First, as the City of San Antonio 2-year fund, and now most recently you've begun the 18-month initiative called Rising Up Together San Antonio. Is there anything you can share about the experience? How receiving the investments was, and would you mind sharing what some of the things you did with those investments?
Of course, yes. And I am forever grateful to UpTogether. So the first time that we received the funds was through the City of San Antonio initiative that you mentioned. And so that hit right around COVID. And I can tell you that that money, so my husband at the time he had a remodeling business. COVID hit and that just stopped. It just completely stopped. So we were panicked, we were scared, we were freaking out to say the least. And so when we were chosen to be a part of the initial, what was it, San Antonio Cares, I believe is what it was called, right? When we were chosen to be a part of that, it was a huge blessing because, things that we were stressed about, things that we were just unable to understand. COVID hit everyone in like a very different, well, not very different, but like almost each family was impacted very differently, right? And so ours was the income that we had coming in, the stability of it all, it went out the window. And so the funds from that helped just alleviate a little bit of that stress and make it to where we weren't going absolutely crazy because we knew that we could count on the funds that were coming in every single month through that. So that you have no idea how that impacted us. That in a time when we needed it the most, it came. And so it was able to help us, keep our light bill on, keep our water bill on, put a little bit of, like our hygiene and stuff into the home. And so it became a part of our budget every single month that, we knew what we were going to use these funds for. And it helped not have us so stressed out because we were, as I'm sure everyone else was, but we were going crazy, not knowing where, our water bill money was going to come from, or our light bill, or you know, just knowing that that was one less thing we had to stress about. It saved our mental health. I can tell you that for sure.
Was there any value in not being told how to spend the money, being able to choose how you want to spend it?
So, like I mentioned, we ended up using it on bills and on stuff that we needed for our home. But the fact that we didn't have to report or didn't have to, like you said, we weren't told where or how to spend it. I feel like sometimes when programs help you, but then want you to track everything, and it kind of makes you feel a little inferior, right? You feel like judged, or you feel looked down upon sometimes when you're, asked to report these things back, because, you know, how am I paying off my whole light bill with money that was given to me, And so um, it might not be, something that the organization or that the community looks down on you for, but the fact that you're having to rely on this money to be able to, provide for your basic needs is already, in a sense, like humiliating, right? It's, in a time when you have nothing, you feel pretty low. And so having to report back, or having to have parameters of what you can do with it, or how you can spend it, or only this and only that, and not that's like, how would it, for instance, if we were told use it for bills, and then, not being able to understand where or how we were going to be able to come up with the money that we needed for like our hygiene items, that took away a lot more stress, and a lot more, like I said, you feel really low as it is, not being able to provide what's supposed to be basic needs for your family. Sorry. And so having to report all this, or to having to have parameters of what you can do with it, makes you feel just a little bit less. And so not reporting it, or not having that extra person looking over your shoulder, just makes you feel good, because you are in charge of your family again. You're able to make these decisions that you would normally be making with your own money, but now it's money that came in a moment when you needed it the most. And so that just that was amazing to me. That helped me feel confident in being, again, that matriarch of my family, where I'm able to delegate and do what I do best, right?
Monique, everything that you've shared with us speaks to how strong you are, and how amazing you are. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much for what you guys are doing. Honestly, I know that for my family, speaking for my family, this this these funds that we get every single month helps um, take a little bit of worry off of, like, of things that normally would be stressing, or stressing us out. It's a way of not having to do that anymore. I was just speaking with someone here at the conference that I'm at, and the Children's Trust Fund Alliance did a study last year where they showed that when a family's basic needs are met, the risk of child abuse and neglect goes down dramatically, dramatically, right? So if you're not, you can't accept services, and you can't be receptive to any sort of resources if all you're doing is worrying about, oh, yes, you want me to go to parenting class? Let's go. That's great. But my lights are about to get shut off at home. What are you going to be thinking about more? Your lights, right? And so having these funds that are available to families like ours helps not have that worry, and helps us be able to, you know, get things done that we need for our family, and also being able to be put in a position where we are going to be, helping other people connect with these resources and connect with programs and stuff. And so I just wanted to say thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart, that this has definitely helped not just my family, but the families that are coming behind me, because you guys, yes, are helping me physically, but you're helping me not have that constant worry or constant stress on my mind of, where am I going to get the money for this bill, or where am I going to get the money for this item that I know that I need for sure. And so you will never know the impact that you have in helping one family with money. You are now helping a whole line of community people that I also help. So the impact of what you guys are doing isn't just a single family. I guarantee you that it is a community-wide, statewide, and even countrywide thing. And I appreciate it so very much.
Monique, we appreciate you. You set the Fireside Chat on fire today with your story and your perspective. I know this is not the only time we'll hear your story. I'm excited to see how your story progresses on the journey, especially with the Rising Up Together San Antonio over the next several months. And just I thank you for being here. I thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate y'all having me.